So I've got some slides. I'll just run through where we're at, and then I'm very happy to chat through any questions or any comments that anybody has at the end, if that's okay. So why are we doing this? So the current situation we have in neonates is that there's just not enough capacity within the service to meet the demand. And what we do find at the minute is we've got a high number of babies being sent out of network for their care. This has impacted on their mortality rates within the service, and this has been particularly highlighted through the 2020 GIRFT report. And also we've had an intensive critical care report for the organisation that has basically said for us to retain our intensive care status as a trust, we need to solve the capacity challenge by the end of 2024. So on average, we send out or refuse over about 116 babies due to capacity challenges. And then some of these babies stay within the region, some of them go further afield depending on where the capacity is. And obviously this has a huge impact on the parents and siblings and other family members involved within that. Now, we currently have 2 intensive care units, so one at the City and one at the Queen's. And we are required to provide 2,000 critical care days a year on each side of town to do that. And we currently are unable to do that on both sides of town. So what this business case will do, and when we've built the new unit, it will change the designated status. So City will become a local neonatal unit and Queen's will remain as the only intensive care unit here once we open in December 2024. So the plan to address the concerns are that we would expand the number of cots here at QMC from 17 to 38, which is quite a significant increase there. And we would also look to take 6 cots out at the City, which would then enable them to have more space to meet the guidelines that they should meet around each of the individual cots at the City. And there will also be the ability to stabilise and transfer for intensive care at the City across 4 cots once we open and manage the local neonatal unit and the intensive care. So an outline business case was written a couple of years ago, and that was approved by NHS England in June of 2022. When I joined the programme in April last year, we were in the process of starting to do the full business case that was then required. The total cost is around 36 million to do this piece of work, and that doesn't include the decant work that sits outside of this process. And I'll talk about that in a moment. So we got full approval from NHS England to do the full business case in February of this year. So we did an engagement exercise through the ICB. We did a report. It's been to the Health Oversight Scrutiny Committee, and we engaged with staff and some families around this piece of work. But it's important to say that the size of this business case doesn't warrant consultation in the way that Tomorrow's NUH does. This is more around making people aware of the changes that we are making within the organisation for the pathways that will change through this project. So originally in the OBC, there were some things that we said that we would do. We would put 8 additional maternity beds in at QMC, and we would expand Theatre 2 in maternity. As we've worked up the full business case, we've not included 8 additional beds at QMC for various reasons. One, there's no physical estate to put those beds in. And the challenge with this programme is that it is a refurb, and so we're working within the existing footprint of the trust rather than trying to build a new ideal unit, which would be more of our aim for Tomorrow's NUH. And we had hoped to expand Theatre 2 in maternity, but it's been very difficult to clinically support a decant for up to 9 months, which was what would be required for maternity services at QMC to expand Theatre 2. And so the decision was taken clinically through many different committees and many different service conversations to take those out of the business case at the moment. And so we are not adjusting Theatre 2 in maternity or putting any additional maternity beds in, but the staffing still stays the same for midwives. So 17 additional midwives will go into the case, and we will manage the bed stock across the trust in a different way because we do have that capacity within maternity services. So the drivers we've been through originally, so they still remain the same. But what we now needed to establish is we needed to do a decant to build this, because the original proposal in the OBC was that we would build this with babies still in cots and that this would be a phased approach. And there are a number of reasons why we can't do that with babies still in situ, and I'll go through those on the next slide. So the reason we were unable to do a phased approach is for noise implications. So we cannot exceed 40 decibels around the neonatal babies, and it is impossible to build a construction project of this size without exceeding that noise. And also we're unable to isolate the mains gas in East Blocks at QMC, and the window replacement scheme that you'll all be aware of and the asbestos impact around that also make it impossible. So the decision was then made that we needed to find a way to be able to decant the entire of the neonatal service for the duration of this construction, which is a very challenging approach to take, and it's involved a lot of other services having to move around to accommodate how we do this. So there are existing business continuity plans for the service, and obviously we've worked with all of the services involved. So the business continuity plan for NICU is that they would decant into B floor theatres, which is the children's surgical unit. That then requires us to displace everything from there in a chain to enable all of these things to be able to be done. So our plan is that hopefully on Friday, the 12th of May this year, we will be looking to vacate B floor theatres, and we will be moving surgical lists up, one into ENT, one into main theatres, and the pre-op element that is currently also done within B floor will move into the old family health DLT offices on B floor, and they will have a self-contained preoperative suite for the duration of this construction. Once we've moved those and we've moved the theatre teams up, we then have to move some adult surgical lists around to accommodate peds going into ENT and into main theatres. The services that are displaced for peds are paediatric surgery and pre-op, as we've discussed. Surgery going into ENT and main floor theatres. Pre-op going into the old family health offices. ENT and ophthalmology will then move out of ENT into the TC. Max Fax and community dental will move into main theatres. And then from the TC, endoscopy and hands will move into main floor theatres as well. And as you will all be aware, there'll be a lot of conversations and work that's happened behind the scenes to create this timetable. A timetable has now been agreed by all specialties, and that was finalised this week. QIA for each of these moves have been undertaken. Most have been signed off by Keith and Michelle. There are the surgical ones that are going to Keith and Michelle next week. Then every service move will have had a fully signed off QIA. We've invested massively in the equipment side for all of the services that are moving for anything that may need to be in a different location, and to ensure the staff is also there. So teams will move with their services, but we've also supported with any additional non-recurrent posts that have been needed for people as well to support this move for a fragmented service for a period of time. So the impact of time. Decant work started early this year on the pre-op area and in ambulatory care to engage to make sure all of that work is underway. Then once we decant everybody out over the weekend of the 13th and 14th of May, then we will start working B floor theatres, which will need to be upgraded with its ventilation with a new air handling unit. There'll also be some changes to existing layout to accommodate the neonatal service going in there so that it functions best for them. They can fit their existing number of cots into there, so 17 cots will still move across. And they have decanted in there before, but not for this length of time. So, and we will have to mitigate carefully the proximity to maternity, which will no longer obviously be adjacent, but we are working with maternity colleagues to ensure that that flow happens. And again, a QIA has been undertaken in great detail to make sure we've mitigated all of the risks as best that we can. Once the work finishes on B floor theatres, neonates will look to decant into there on the week of the 8th of September of this year. Construction would then look to start on site on the week of the 15th of September this year to do the main programme. And then obviously they're on site until around October, November 2024, when we then move everybody back into the domino effect back to where they were. With at the end of December 2024, everybody is back in their original home that they originally vacated for the start of this process. Unless there are any things that services find work better or that they would like to change, and then there will be an option for us to work through that with people to support them in case there are things that we find work better, and actually we may not want to go back to where we were before. But currently the plan is that everybody reverts back to where they were before, and that just gives you the overall timeline that I've just discussed through. So that's kind of a bit of a whistle-stop tour of where we are with the MNR programme. And I know Leona has just joined, who's the clinical lead for the MNR and is one of the consultant neonatologists.